The emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos. Doctors in crisp white coats, nurses moving with practiced urgency, patients waiting in various states of distress. But in the far corner, near the supply closet, a different kind of emergency was unfolding. Stephanie Green clutched her abdomen, her dark skin glistening with cold sweat. The yellow cleaning uniform clung to her trembling frame as she leaned against the wall, fighting to stay upright. Pain radiated through her body in waves so intense she could barely breathe. "Excuse me," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper as a nurse walked past. "I need—" The nurse didn't even slow down. Stephanie tried again, reaching out toward a young doctor scrolling through his phone. "Please, I think something's wrong." He glanced at her uniform, at the mop bucket beside her, and kept walking. The waiting room had gone quieter now. People were watching, some with pity, most with indifference. A security guard stood by the entrance, arms crossed, deliberately looking away. Near the reception desk, a man sat perfectly still. Andrew Caruso wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Stephanie made in 6 months. His dark hair was impeccably styled, a carefully groomed beard framing a face that commanded attention without seeking it. At 42, he carried the kind of power that didn't need to announce itself. He had been waiting for over an hour, observing everything with those calculating dark eyes, observing her. Stephanie's vision blurred. She pressed harder against the wall, her breathing shallow and rapid. Another nurse passed, then another. Not one person stopped. The silence in the waiting room grew heavier, thick with unspoken understanding. Everyone knew what they were witnessing. Everyone chose to look away. Everyone except Andrew Caruso. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as he watched the cleaning woman struggle. His fingers drummed once against his knee, a gesture his associates would recognize as dangerous. But he didn't move. Not yet. He was waiting to see just how far this would go. If you think hospitals should help everyone equally, keep watching. What happens next will shock you. 3 hours earlier, Stephanie's alarm had gone off at 4:30 a.m., just like it did every morning. She lived in a one-bedroom apartment in the South Bronx with her 8-year-old daughter, Maya, and her grandmother, who could barely walk anymore. The morning routine was always the same. Wake up, get Maya ready for school, prepare breakfast, make sure Grandma had her medication, then take 2 buses to reach Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan by 6 a.m. Stephanie had been working as a cleaner there for 3 years, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. The pay was terrible, but it came with health insurance, the only reason she stayed. Maya had asthma, and the medical bills would destroy them without coverage. She was invisible to most of the staff. The doctors and nurses walked past her like she was part of the furniture. She'd learned to accept it, to find dignity in doing her work well, in keeping the floors spotless, in making sure every room was sanitized perfectly. But lately, something had been wrong. The pain had started 2 weeks ago. Sharp, stabbing sensations in her lower abdomen. She'd ignored it at first, told herself it was stress, exhaustion, bad period cramps. But it was getting worse. This morning she'd almost called in sick. She couldn't afford to lose this job. By 2 p.m., she was cleaning the 3rd-floor hallway when the pain hit differently. It felt like someone was twisting a knife inside her. She gasped, dropping her mop, gripping the wall. "Watch it!" A resident jumped back as dirty water splashed near his shoes. "I'm sorry, Stephanie tried to straighten up, but the pain doubled her over. The resident looked at her with annoyance. "You okay?" "I think I need to sit down. Cafeteria's on the 1st floor." He walked away without another glance. Stephanie made it to the staff bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. Her reflection looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, skin ashen. She was burning up. Something was seriously wrong. She needed help. She worked at a hospital, for God's sake. Surely someone would. The bathroom door opened. Dr. Patricia Morrison walked in, the head of the ER department. Stephanie had seen her around, always impeccably dressed, always in command. "Dr. Morrison," Stephanie said, her voice shaking, "I'm really sorry to bother you, but I think I need medical attention. The pain—" Dr. Morrison barely glanced at her. "Make an appointment at the clinic. We're short-staffed today, but I work here. I have insurance through—" "The clinic opens at 8 a.m. tomorrow. If it's an emergency, go to the ER like everyone else." She washed her hands and left. Stephanie stood there, trembling. Go to the ER like everyone else. She worked in this hospital. She cleaned their floors, their equipment, their messes. And they wouldn't even look at her. By 4 p.m., Stephanie couldn't take it anymore. The pain was unbearable. She made her way down to the emergency room, still in her cleaning uniform, still carrying that invisible badge of insignificance. That's when she saw him for the first time. Andrew Caruso sat in the waiting area like he owned it. Everything about him screamed power. The cut of his suit, the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist, the way he held himself with absolute certainty. Two men stood at a respectful distance, clearly security, though they wore suits instead of uniforms. Stephanie had seen men like him before, usually visiting private patients on the VIP floor. Money, influence, the kind of people who never had to wait for anything. She approached the reception desk, each step agony. The receptionist, a blonde woman named Jessica, who'd never once acknowledged Stephanie in 3 years, looked up with professional indifference. I need to see a doctor, Stephanie said quietly. I'm an employee here. I have insurance, and I think there's something really wrong. Name? Stephanie Green. I work in housekeeping, ID and insurance card. Stephanie fumbled with her wallet, her hands shaking so badly she dropped it, cards scattered across the floor. She bent to pick them up and nearly blacked out from the pain. No one helped her. She could feel eyes on her, other patients watching, staff members glancing over, that particular kind of attention that came with judgment, with pity, with deliberate inaction. Finally, she gathered everything and handed it to Jessica. The receptionist typed slowly, deliberately. You'll have to wait. We have actual emergencies. This is an emergency. Ma'am, everyone here thinks they're an emergency. Take a seat. Stephanie wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to demand to be seen, but she'd learned long ago that women who looked like her, who worked jobs like hers, didn't get to make demands. She took a seat, trying to control her breathing, trying not to cry in front of all these people. Across the room, Andrew Caruso's eyes tracked every movement. He'd been listening to everything, watching everything. His expression hadn't changed, but his fingers had stopped drumming. That was when Stephanie's body decided it couldn't wait anymore. The pain exploded through Stephanie's abdomen like fire. She doubled over in her chair, a small cry escaping before she could stop it. A few people looked over. Most looked away. She tried to stand to make it back to the desk, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She grabbed the armrest, breathing in short, desperate gasps. Please, she called out, her voice breaking. Please, someone. A nurse walked past, pushing a wheelchair with an elderly patient. Please, Stephanie reached out. The nurse glanced at her uniform and kept walking. Stephanie's vision started to blur. She was going to pass out, right here, in the emergency room of the hospital where she worked, surrounded by doctors and nurses who were trained to save lives, and not one of them would help her. That's when she heard it, a sound that made the entire waiting room freeze. Footsteps. Slow, measured, deliberate. The kind of footsteps that carried weight. Andrew Caruso stood. The two men who'd been standing near him immediately straightened, their hands moving almost imperceptibly toward their jackets. The air in the room changed. It was subtle but unmistakable, like the pressure drop before a storm. Andrew walked toward Stephanie, his movements fluid and controlled. He stopped in front of her, looking down at where she sat trembling and pale. Their eyes met. His were dark, intense, and saw everything. Hers were filled with pain and humiliation and desperate hope. How long have you been waiting? His voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire room. Stephanie's voice cracked. 40 minutes. But I work here, You work here. It wasn't a question. Andrew's gaze swept over her uniform, the hospital ID clipped to her chest, then back to her face. And no one has helped you. It wasn't a question that time either. Jessica, the receptionist, suddenly found her keyboard very interesting. Andrew turned his head slightly toward his men. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. One of them immediately pulled out a phone. Then Andrew did something that made Stephanie's breath catch. He knelt down. This man in his $1,000 suit knelt on the hospital floor beside her chair, "Where's the pain?" he asked, his voice lower now, meant only for her. My stomach. Lower right side, it's—" Another wave hit and she gasped. Andrew's jaw tightened. He stood, turned toward the reception desk and said 2 words. "Get Morrison." The way he said it, quiet, final, with absolute certainty that he would be obeyed, made Jessica grab the phone immediately. "Dr. Morrison is with a patient now." Jessica's hand trembled as she dialed. Stephanie tried to process what was happening. Who was this man? Why was he helping her? And why did everyone suddenly look terrified? Within 90 seconds, Dr. Morrison appeared, her professional smile firmly in place, until she saw who had summoned her. The smile vanished. "Mr. Caruso," she said carefully, "I wasn't aware you were this woman." Andrew gestured to Stephanie without taking his eyes off Dr. Morrison. "Works for this hospital. Has been in pain for 40 minutes, has been ignored by your entire staff, including you, I believe." "Doctor," Morrison's face went pale. There must be some mistake." "There is." Andrew's voice dropped to something dangerous. "The mistake is assuming that someone's worth is measured by their uniform." The silence in the waiting room was absolute. "I want her examined immediately," Andrew continued, "by your best physician in a private room with every test necessary. And I want to know the name of every staff member who walked past her. All of them." Dr. Morrison looked like she might be sick. "Of course, right away, I'll—" "Not you," Andrew cut her off. "You had your chance. Get someone who remembers what their oath means." A younger doctor appeared as if summoned. Dr. Chen, who Stephanie had seen around but never spoken to. He looked between Andrew and Stephanie, understanding immediately. "Ma'am," he said gently, producing a wheelchair. "Let's get you examined right now." Stephanie tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Andrew moved faster than seemed possible for a man his size, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. The touch was brief, professional, but it sent a shock through her entire system that had nothing to do with pain. "Thank you," she whispered, looking up at him. Their eyes met again. Something passed between them, recognition of some kind, though of what, Stephanie couldn't say. "Andrew Caruso," he said quietly, then helped her into the wheelchair. "Stephanie Green," she managed. "I know." He'd read her ID badge. As Dr. Chen wheeled her toward the examination rooms. Stephanie looked back. Andrew stood in the middle of the waiting room like a statue, his eyes still fixed on Dr. Morrison, who looked like she was facing a firing squad. "I want a full report," Andrew said, his voice carrying, "of her condition, of her treatment, and of why this happened. You have 2 hours." It wasn't a request. Stephanie was wheeled into a private examination room, the kind usually reserved for VIPs and major donors. Nurses appeared immediately, taking her vitals, starting an IV, treating her with a care and attention she'd never experienced in this hospital. Dr. Chen was thorough, gentle, professional. "We're going to run some tests. Blood work, ultrasound, possibly a CT scan. From what you're describing, I'm concerned about your appendix." 20 minutes later, the ultrasound confirmed it. Acute appendicitis, advanced. She needed surgery. Soon. "You should have come in days ago," Dr. Chen said, not unkindly. "Another few hours and it could have ruptured." Stephanie laughed bitterly. "I tried." Dr. Chen's expression darkened. "I know. I'm sorry." They prepped her for emergency surgery. Through the fog of pain medication, Stephanie thought about the man in the expensive suit who'd knelt beside her chair, who'd made an entire hospital jump to attention with just his presence. Who was Andrew Caruso? And why did it feel like her life had just changed forever? Stephanie woke up to the smell of flowers. Expensive flowers. The kind that came from actual florists, not hospital gift shops. Roses, lilies, orchids arranged in crystal vases that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She blinked, trying to orient herself. Private room, soft lighting, comfortable bed, medical equipment beeping steadily, and sitting in the chair by the window, reading what looked like a financial newspaper, was Andrew Caruso. He looked up the moment her breathing changed, as if he'd been monitoring it. "You're awake." He folded the newspaper precisely, set it aside, and stood. "How do you feel?" Stephanie's mind raced. How long had he been there? Why was he there at all? "Confused," she said honestly, "and sore." "What? How long?" 36 hours. The surgery went well, but there were complications. Your appendix had already begun to rupture. Another hour. He didn't finish the sentence. 36 hours. Maya, her grandmother. "My daughter." Stephanie tried to sit up, panic flooding through her. "Is fine." Andrew raised a hand calmingly. "Maya is with your grandmother. They've been provided with everything they need. A nurse visits twice daily to help with your grandmother's care. Your rent has been paid. Your daughter is being driven to and from school." Stephanie stared at him. What? How do you even know?" "I make it my business to know things." Andrew pulled his chair closer to the bed. "Especially when someone nearly dies because of negligence. I don't understand. You don't even know me." "I know enough." His dark eyes studied her face. "I know you work 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. I know you're raising a daughter alone while caring for a grandmother with mobility issues. I know you were ignored by 14 separate medical professionals before you collapsed. I know that you tried to ask for help 5 times and were dismissed every single time. How security footage, witness statements, your employment records." He said it matter-of-factly, as if conducting thorough investigations was perfectly normal. "I wanted to know exactly what happened." Stephanie's head was spinning. "Why? Why would you do all this for someone you don't know?" Andrew was quiet for a moment, his expression difficult to read. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost dangerous. "Because I watched them treat you like you were invisible. Like your life didn't matter because you clean floors instead of saving lives." His jaw tightened. "I've seen a lot of cruelty in my life, Stephanie. But watching those people walk past you while you were dying, that was a different kind of evil." The way he said her name, Stephanie, not ma'am or miss or hey you, made something crack in her chest. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Really?" Andrew's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Someone who values dignity, loyalty, people who work hard and ask for nothing. Someone who—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Doesn't appreciate seeing good people treated badly." It wasn't an answer. Not really. But the way he held himself, the deference the staff showed him, the ease with which he'd made an entire hospital dance to his tune. Stephanie wasn't naive. Andrew Caruso was dangerous, powerful, connected in ways that made doctors and administrators terrified. She should probably be afraid. Instead, she felt safer than she had in years. "What happened?" she asked. "After they took me to surgery." Andrew's expression hardened. "Dr. Morrison has been suspended pending a full investigation. Jessica from reception has been terminated. Several nurses and staff members are facing disciplinary action. That seems appropriate," Andrew finished. "They let you suffer, let you beg, let you nearly die. Actions have consequences." "You didn't hurt anyone, did you?" The question came out before Stephanie could stop it. Andrew's eyebrows rose slightly. "Hurt them? No, Stephanie, I don't hurt people for things like this." His voice dropped lower. "I ruin them professionally, socially. I make sure everyone knows what they did. That's far more effective than violence." The way he said it sent a shiver down her spine, not from fear, from something else entirely. "The hospital board has also agreed to implement new protocols," Andrew continued. "Any employee reporting symptoms will be seen immediately, regardless of their position. They're calling it the Green Protocol." Stephanie's eyes widened. "They named it after me?" I insisted. "Why? Why would you go to all this trouble for what?" Andrew leaned forward slightly. "For someone who doesn't matter. Someone whose life isn't worth protecting." His eyes burned into hers. "That's exactly what they thought. That's exactly what I'm correcting." Stephanie felt tears burning behind her eyes. When was the last time someone had fought for her, protected her, seen her as worth the effort? "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know how I can ever—" "You don't need to repay me." Andrew stood, straightening his suit jacket. "Just get better. Focus on your recovery. Everything else is handled." He moved toward the door, and Stephanie felt something close to panic. "Wait," she called out. Will I see you again?" Andrew paused, his hand on the door handle. When he turned back, something flickered across his face, something almost vulnerable. "Yes," he said simply. "You will." After he left, Stephanie lay back against the pillows, her mind spinning. She'd worked at this hospital for 3 years. 3 years of being invisible, insignificant, ignored. And in less than 48 hours, Andrew Caruso had turned her world completely upside down. She should be overwhelmed, confused, possibly terrified. Instead, she touched the spot on her arm where he'd steadied her, where his hand had been firm and warm and unexpectedly gentle. And she wondered what it would feel like to be protected like that always, to matter to someone like him, to not be invisible anymore. Stephanie stayed in the hospital for 5 days. Normally, appendectomy patients went home in 2 or 3, but the complications from the delayed surgery required extra monitoring. Andrew visited every day. Sometimes he'd stay for hours, working quietly in the chair by the window while she slept. Sometimes he'd only stop by for a few minutes, checking on her progress with Dr. Chen. Once he brought Maya to visit, and Stephanie watched in amazement as this intimidating man knelt down to talk to her 8-year-old daughter about school and books and whether she liked strawberry ice cream. Maya had been shy at first, but Andrew had a way of making people feel safe. He'd brought her a book about space. Apparently, he'd researched her interests and promised to take her to the planetarium when her mom was better. Stephanie's grandmother had been even more direct. "That man's in love with you," she'd said during one visit, eyeing Andrew through the doorway. "And he's dangerous. Be careful, baby." But Stephanie couldn't be careful, not anymore. Not when she was starting to see past the expensive suits and quiet authority to the man underneath. On the 4th day, Andrew brought lunch from a restaurant Stephanie couldn't pronounce. Real food, not hospital meals. They ate together by the window, and for the first time, Andrew talked about himself. Small things. Careful things. He'd grown up in Brooklyn. His father had died when he was young. He'd built his business from nothing, though he never specified what that business actually was. He had no family left except cousins he rarely saw. "It's lonely sometimes," as he admitted, staring out at the city. "Success. Power. People defer to you, but they don't really know you." "I know the feeling," Stephanie said softly. "Being invisible is lonely too, just in a different way." Their eyes met. Understanding passed between them. Two people from completely different worlds who somehow recognized the same isolation in each other. "You're not invisible to me," Andrew said quietly. "You never were." Stephanie's breath caught. "Why? What did you see that made you—" "Dignity." Andrew's voice was firm. "In the way you kept trying to ask for help, even though they kept dismissing you. The way you didn't scream or cause a scene, even though you had every right to. The way you held yourself together while everything was falling apart." He paused. "That takes strength. Real strength." No one had ever described Stephanie as strong before. Hard-working, maybe responsible, but strong. "I'm not strong," she said. "I'm just trying to survive." "That's exactly what strength is." Andrew leaned forward. "People who've never struggled think strength is about dominance, control, force, but real strength." He shook his head. "Real strength is getting up every day when you're exhausted, working 12 hours when your body is failing, raising a child alone, caring for a grandmother who can't care for herself. That's the kind of strength that actually matters." Stephanie felt something shift in her chest. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, saw her. Really saw her. Not the uniform, not the job title, not the poverty. Her. "Andrew," she said carefully, "what do you actually do? Your business?" His expression closed slightly. Import and export, logistics, investments. It was a non-answer, and they both knew it. "Am I in danger?" Stephanie asked directly. "Because I know you, because you helped me." Andrew's eyes darkened. "No one will ever hurt you. I promise you that." The intensity in his voice sent a shiver through her. It wasn't a casual promise. It was absolute. Final. "What if someone tries?" she pushed. "They won't try twice." Andrew said it casually, like discussing the weather, but Stephanie understood the implication. She should probably be scared, probably should distance herself from whatever world Andrew inhabited. But all she could think about was how safe she felt when he was near, how protected, how, for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was facing everything alone. That evening, Dr. Morrison appeared in her doorway. The former head of the ER department looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, no makeup, wearing a simple blouse instead of her usual designer scrubs. "Ms. Green," she said stiffly, "may I come in?" Stephanie nodded, wary. Dr. Morrison stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She stood there for a long moment, clearly struggling. "I owe you an apology," she finally said. "A genuine one. Not because I'm trying to save my job, that's gone, but because what I did was inexcusable." Stephanie waited. "I saw you in that bathroom," Dr. Morrison continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I saw that you were in pain, and I dismissed you because—" she took a breath. "Because you were a cleaner, because I was busy, because I'd done it 100 times before and never faced consequences." "You could have killed me," Stephanie said quietly. "I know." Dr. Morrison's eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I will have to live with that for the rest of my life." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Andrew Caruso made me realize something." Dr. Morrison met her eyes. "I became a doctor to help people. All people. Somewhere along the way I forgot that. I started seeing uniforms instead of humans, positions instead of patients." She paused. "You deserved better. Everyone deserves better." Stephanie studied the woman in front of her. This wasn't a performance. This was genuine remorse. "What will you do now?" Stephanie asked. "I don't know. My medical license is under review. My reputation is destroyed. Mr. Caruso made sure of that." Dr. Morrison's voice held no bitterness, only acceptance. "But maybe that's what I needed, to lose everything before I could remember why I started." After she left, Stephanie sat in the quiet room, thinking about justice, about consequences, about how Andrew had promised he didn't hurt people. He just made sure they understood their mistakes. This was protection, yes, but it was also a kind of mercy. Dr. Morrison could have lost more, been destroyed completely. Instead, she'd been given a chance to learn, to change. Andrew's justice was measured, purposeful, surgical. And Stephanie realized she trusted it, trusted him. The next morning, Andrew arrived earlier than usual. His expression was different, tense, alert. "What's wrong?" Stephanie asked immediately. "Nothing's wrong." Andrew's voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. "But there's something you need to know about me, about what happened here." Stephanie sat up straighter, ignoring the pull in her incision. "Tell me." Andrew moved to the window, his back to her. "I own 40% of this hospital. Silent partnership, nothing public. I've funded research wings, equipment purchases, charity care programs." He turned. "When I walked into that ER, I was there for a board meeting. I was early, so I waited." Stephanie's mind raced. "So when you helped me, I was already planning to destroy Morrison," Andrew said bluntly. "She'd been cutting corners, prioritizing wealthy patients, turning away people without insurance. I had evidence. I was building a case." He paused, "And then I watched her walk past you in that bathroom, watched her dismiss you like you were nothing. And I realized it wasn't just about hospital policy or profit margins. What was it about? Dignity, humanity. The fact that people like Morrison forgot that everyone matters." Andrew's voice was fierce. "You could have died, Stephanie, not because there wasn't help available, not because the hospital lacked resources, but because the people with the power to save you decided you weren't worth their time." Stephanie processed this. "So this wasn't just about me. It became about you the moment you tried to ask for help." Andrew moved closer. "I could have handled Morrison quietly, made her resign, covered it up, moved on. But then I saw your face when they kept ignoring you. The humiliation, the pain, the desperation." His hands clenched. "No, this needed to be public. People needed to see what happened. Needed to understand that there are consequences for treating people as less than human." "You're protecting more than just me," Stephanie realized. "Yes, but make no mistake. Andrew's eyes locked onto hers. You are the one I care about most. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Andrew, I know this is complicated, he continued. I know we come from different worlds. I know my reputation, what people probably tell you about me. And they're not wrong, Stephanie. I'm not a good man. I've done things that would horrify you. Then why? Because when I look at you, I see everything I wish I'd protected, everyone I failed to save. His voice cracked slightly. My mother worked 3 jobs, died from a stroke at 40 because she couldn't afford to see a doctor. She kept saying she was fine. It was just stress. She'd rest later. And one day, there was no later. Stephanie's eyes filled with tears. I swore I'd never let that happen again, Andrew said. That I'd build enough power, enough influence, enough fear that no one would ever have to beg for help and be ignored. And then I watched history repeat itself right in front of me. He shook his head. I couldn't save my mother, but I could save you. Stephanie reached out, her hand finding his. You did save me. Andrew looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face. You deserve better than this, than me. Don't I get to decide that? Stephanie's voice was steady, despite her tears. You should decide with all the information. Andrew pulled a folded paper from his jacket. These are the names of people I've had investigated. The ones who ignored you, the ones who knew you were in crisis and walked away. He placed it on the bed. Some have been fired, some suspended. Some have chosen to resign. All have professional marks that will follow them. Stephanie picked up the paper with trembling hands. 14 names, 14 people whose careers had been damaged because of her. Is this justice? She whispered. Or is it revenge? It's accountability. Andrew's voice was firm. They made a choice. I made sure that choice had consequences. That's not revenge. That's how the world should work. Stephanie looked at the names. Some she recognized, some she didn't. All of them had seen her suffering and chosen to do nothing. What about the others? She asked. The ones who weren't there, who didn't know. Unaffected. This isn't about punishing innocence. It's about making sure specific individuals understand that dignity matters, that human life matters, regardless of someone's job title or bank account. Stephanie folded the paper carefully. You're right, she said quietly. This isn't revenge. It's justice. Andrew's expression softened with visible relief. And, Stephanie continued, holding his gaze, you're wrong about one thing. You are a good man. Maybe not by everyone's definition, but by mine, yes. Stephanie, you saw someone in pain and helped them. You made sure I got the care I needed. You protected my daughter and grandmother. You held people accountable for cruelty. She squeezed his hand. That's what good men do. Andrew stared at her like she'd just revealed the secrets of the universe. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and reverent it made her breath catch. You're extraordinary, he said softly, and I'm going to make sure you never have to fight alone again. It wasn't a marriage proposal. It wasn't even a declaration of love. It was a vow. And Stephanie believed him. Stephanie was discharged on the 6th day with strict instructions to rest for at least 2 weeks before returning to work. Andrew had arranged for a car service to take her home, for meals to be delivered, for a home health aide to check on her daily. This is too much, Stephanie protested as Andrew walked her to the car. I can't accept all this. Yes, you can. Andrew opened the car door for her. And you will, because I'm not asking, Stephanie. I'm telling you. She should have bristled at his commanding tone. Instead, she felt cared for, protected. Bossy, she said, but she was smiling. You have no idea. Andrew's eyes gleamed with something dark and promising. Then his expression sobered. There's something else. The hospital board is meeting tonight. Final decisions about personnel, policies, everything that happened. Will you be there? Yes, and I'd like you to be there too. Stephanie's eyes widened. Me? Why? Because this started with you. Because your voice matters. Andrew crouched down so they were eye level. These people made you invisible. I want them to see you, really see you. Understand that you're not just a name on a report or a lawsuit they need to settle. You're a person they failed. Stephanie's heart raced. I don't know if I can. You can! Andrew's voice was absolute. You're stronger than you know. But I won't force you, it's your choice. Stephanie thought about it. Thought about all those people who'd walked past her, all the years she'd been invisible, all the times she'd swallowed her dignity and kept quiet. Okay, she said. I'll be there. Andrew's smile was fierce and proud. Good. I'll pick you up at 7. The hospital boardroom was intimidating. Dark wood, leather chairs, a massive table that seated 20 people. When Stephanie walked in beside Andrew, still moving carefully because of her surgery, every conversation stopped. The board members stared. Some looked guilty, some uncomfortable, some defiant. Andrew guided her to a seat at the head of the table, then took the chair beside her. 2 of his men stood by the door, silent and watchful. Gentlemen, ladies, Andrew began, his voice cutting through the tension. Thank you for gathering on short notice. Before we begin tonight's agenda, I'd like to introduce you to someone. Stephanie Green. All eyes turned to her. Stephanie lifted her chin, meeting their gazes steadily. Ms. Green worked in housekeeping at this hospital, Andrew continued. 6 days ago, she collapsed in the emergency room from acute appendicitis. Before collapsing, she attempted to seek help 5 separate times. She was ignored by 14 medical professionals. She nearly died. The room was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. Some of you have reviewed the security footage, Andrew said. Some of you have read the witness statements. All of you know what happened. Tonight, we're here to determine what happens next. An older man at the far end of the table, Board Chairman William Hargrove, cleared his throat. Mr. Caruso, we appreciate your concern. But this is a personnel matter that should be handled internally. Nothing about this will be handled internally. Andrew's voice dropped to something dangerous. This hospital receives significant funding from my foundation. Funding that can be withdrawn if I determine the institution doesn't share my values. Hargrove's face reddened. That sounds like a threat. It's a statement of fact. Andrew didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. Mount Sinai exists to save lives, all lives. When it fails that mission, there are consequences. Another board member, a woman in her 50s named Dr. Elizabeth Warren, spoke up. Mr. Caruso, I don't think anyone here condones what happened, but destroying careers, terminating staff, creating a media spectacle, isn't that excessive? Andrew turned to Stephanie. Ms. Green, would you like to answer that? All eyes shifted to her. Stephanie's heart pounded, but she thought about Maya, about her grandmother, about every woman like her who worked invisible jobs and suffered in silence. I've worked at this hospital for 3 years, Stephanie said, her voice quiet but steady. I clean the floors you walk on. I sanitize the equipment that saves lives. I work 12-hour shifts and raise my daughter alone, and I never asked for anything except the same basic human dignity you'd show anyone else. She paused, letting her words sink in. When I was dying, I didn't ask for special treatment. I didn't demand to jump the line. I just wanted someone to listen, someone to care. Her voice strengthened. And 14 people looked at my uniform, at my skin, at my job title, and decided I wasn't worth their time. Dr. Warren had the grace to look ashamed. Is accountability excessive? Stephanie continued. Is it excessive to say that people who let other people die because of their prejudices should face consequences? Is it excessive to demand that medical professionals actually help sick people? She looked around the table. I don't think it is. I think it's the minimum. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Hargrove spoke, his voice much softer. Ms. Green, on behalf of this board and this hospital, I offer you our sincerest apologies. What happened to you was unconscionable. Apologies aren't enough, Andrew said flatly. Ms. Green deserves compensation for medical expenses, lost wages and emotional distress. She deserves a formal public statement acknowledging what happened, and she deserves a guarantee that no one else will ever be treated this way again. The Green Protocol, someone started. Is a start, Andrew interrupted. But protocols are just words on paper. What matters is culture, training, accountability. He leaned forward. I want mandatory bias training for all staff. I want a patient advocate position created specifically to ensure vulnerable populations aren't ignored. I want quarterly reviews of ER treatment equity, and I want it all funded and implemented within 60 days. Hargrove looked like he might argue, then thought better of it. Done. Additionally, Andrew continued, Ms. Green's employment contract will be amended, full health coverage extended to her family, flexible scheduling to accommodate childcare, immediate promotion to facilities management with corresponding salary increase. Wait, Stephanie started, but Andrew gave her a look that said, trust me. She will also receive a formal letter of commendation for her years of service, Andrew added, to be placed in her personnel file and acknowledged at the next staff meeting. Mr. Caruso, Hargrove began. These are non-negotiable terms, Andrew said softly. Accept them or tomorrow morning. The New York Times will receive a very detailed account of what happened here, complete with security footage, names, dates, everything. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Hargrove looked around the table. One by one, the board members nodded. We accept your terms, Hargrove said finally, all of them. Andrew stood, helping Stephanie to her feet. Good. My lawyers will send over the documentation tomorrow. Ms. Green will review it before signing anything. As they walked toward the door, Dr. Warren called out, Ms. Green? Stephanie turned. Thank you, the doctor said quietly, for being brave enough to stand here, for speaking up. You've made this hospital better just by refusing to stay silent. Stephanie felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you for listening. Outside in the parking garage, Stephanie finally let herself breathe. Andrew stood beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. I can't believe you just did that, she said. Threatened the entire board. I didn't threaten them. I gave them a choice. Andrew's expression was calm. They could do the right thing voluntarily, or they could do it after being publicly shamed. Most people choose the former when given the option. Facilities management? Stephanie shook her head. I don't know anything about... You'll learn. You're smart, observant, and you know this hospital better than anyone in administration. Andrew turned to face her fully. And you'll be paid what you're worth instead of what they can get away with. Stephanie looked up at this man who'd turned her entire life around in less than a week. Why? She whispered. Why me? Andrew reached out, his hand cupping her cheek with unexpected gentleness. Because when I saw you fighting for your life while everyone walked past, I saw something I'd spent years trying to find. What? Someone worth protecting. Someone genuine. Someone who matters. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Stephanie's breath caught. Andrew, I know this is fast, he said quickly. I know you probably need time, space, distance from everything that happened. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. But I need you to know... He paused, choosing his words carefully. I need you to know that you're not alone anymore. Not in anything. Stephanie made a decision. A crazy, impulsive, completely out-of-character decision. She stood on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, chaste, barely more than a brush of lips, but it sent electricity through her entire body. When she pulled back, Andrew was staring at her like she'd just performed a miracle. I'm ready, Stephanie said softly, for whatever this is. I'm ready. Andrew's smile was slow, devastating, and filled with promise. Good, because I'm not letting you go. He kissed her properly then, deep, thorough, claiming. It was a kiss that promised protection and passion and a future that Stephanie had never dared to imagine. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Andrew rested his forehead against hers. I'm going to take care of you, he murmured. You and Maya and your grandmother, for as long as you'll let me. That might be a long time, Stephanie warned. Good, Andrew's voice was fierce, because I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time in years, Stephanie believed in fairy tales. Not the sanitized versions, but the real ones, where the princess saved herself and the king recognized her worth, where justice was served and dignity was restored, where protection meant partnership and strength recognized strength. This was her fairy tale, and it was just beginning. 6 months later, Stephanie stood in her new office, a real office, with windows overlooking the city and her name on the door. Director of Facilities Management, a title that still made her shake her head in disbelief. She'd learned fast. Turned out, years of working on the ground floor gave her insights that administrators never had. She knew which equipment needed replacing, which protocols actually worked, which staff members were truly dedicated. Under her leadership, employee satisfaction had increased, efficiency improved, and the Green Protocol had become a model that other hospitals were adopting. Maya loved her new school, one of the best in the city, paid for by a scholarship that Stephanie suspected came from Andrew's foundation. Her grandmother had a live-in aide and had regained some mobility with proper medical care and physical therapy. And Andrew had kept every promise. He picked Maya up from school twice a week, took Stephanie's grandmother to doctor's appointments, showed up for family dinners and birthday parties and school plays. The city whispered about them, the cleaning woman and the dangerous man who'd claimed her. Some called it scandal, others called it romance. Stephanie called it home. She was under no illusions about who Andrew was. She'd learned more over these months, enough to understand the empire he'd built, the respect and fear his name commanded, the grey areas he navigated. But she also knew the man who read bedtime stories to Maya, with different voices for each character. The man who'd spent 3 hours researching treatment options when Stephanie's grandmother had a health scare. The man who'd held her through nightmares about dying alone in a hospital hallway. He was complex, contradictory, capable of both extraordinary kindness and ruthless justice. And he loved her, completely, absolutely, in a way that made her feel safe and cherished and seen. Her office door opened. Andrew stood there in one of his perfect suits, holding a bouquet of her favorite flowers. "Ready?" he asked. "For what?" "Dinner. Maya's at your grandmother's. I made reservations." Stephanie smiled. "You made reservations? Or you intimidated a restaurant into giving you a table?" "Both." Andrew's eyes gleamed with amusement. "Come on. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" Andrew pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Stephanie's heart stopped. "Stephanie Green," he said, his voice steady and sure. 6 months ago, I watched you fight for your life with a strength that humbled me. Since then, you've changed everything. My perspective, my priorities, my heart." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, beautiful, elegant, clearly chosen with care. "I know this is fast by normal standards," Andrew continued. "I know people will say it's too soon, that we come from different worlds, that it won't work. But I don't care what people say, I only care about you. About us. About building a life where you never have to fight alone again." Stephanie's eyes filled with tears. "Marry me," Andrew said simply. "Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, celebrating you, loving you. Let me be the man worthy of your strength." Stephanie thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, invisible, exhausted, fighting to survive. And she thought about the woman she was now, seen, valued, protected, loved. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Andrew. 1,000 times. Yes." Andrew slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. The kiss was deep, reverent, filled with promise. When they finally pulled apart, Stephanie laughed through her tears. "Maya's going to be insufferable. She's been planning our wedding since the 3rd date." "Good thing I already asked her permission then," Andrew said with a smile. "You asked my 8-year-old for permission to marry me?" "Of course. She's the most important person in your life. I needed her blessing." Andrew's expression softened. She said yes, on one condition. "What condition?" "That I promise to always protect you, always take care of you, always make you happy." His voice dropped. "I gave her my word, and I never break my word." Stephanie touched his face, this dangerous, powerful man who'd knelt beside her when she was dying and changed her entire world. "I love you," she said. "I don't think I've said that yet, but I do. I love you completely." Andrew's eyes glowed with an emotion so intense it almost hurt to see. "I love you too, more than I thought I was capable of loving anything." They stood there, holding each other, two people from impossible circumstances who'd found something worth fighting for. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual chaos. But in that office, in that moment, there was only peace. Stephanie Green had been invisible once. Now she was seen, protected, loved, and she would never be invisible again.